Cordelia's shovel scraped against the barn floor with enough force to send sparks flying. Her calloused hands trembling not from exhaustion but from pure rage. The telegram crumpled in her apron pocket felt like a lead weight. Her father's debts had finally caught up with them, and the bank would seize their small homestead by month's end unless she could scrape together $200. "Easy there, miss," came a gravelly voice from behind her. "You're gonna wear a hole clean through to China at that rate." She spun around to find a tall cowboy leaning against the barn door, his weathered hat pulled low over sun-darkened features. Dust motes danced in the afternoon light, streaming past his broad shoulders. And something about his easy stance made her bristle with suspicion. "I'm working for my wage, not putting on a show," she snapped, hefting another shovelful of soiled hay with deliberate violence. The stranger chuckled, pushing off from the doorframe. "Name's Beaumont. Ranch hand here. And you'd be the new barn cleaner old Jasper hired." "Cordelia Whitmore, and I don't need conversation to do my job." She attacked another corner of the stall, her faded calico dress already stained with honest sweat despite the early hour. Beaumont stepped closer, rolling up his sleeves. "Well, Miss Whitmore, seems to me two people can clear this mess faster than one. Boss man ain't around to see us chatting anyway." Before she could protest, he'd grabbed a pitchfork and begun working alongside her with smooth, practiced motions. His hands, she noticed, despite herself, were too soft for a common ranch hand. No rope burns, no deep calluses that came from years of hard labor. "You don't work like the other hands," she observed, wiping sweat from her brow. "How's that?" "They grunt and complain. You work like you own the place." Beaumont paused mid-throw, hay suspended on his fork. "Maybe I just take pride in honest work." "Pride don't pay bills." The words slipped out before she could stop them, bitter as burnt coffee. "Bills troubling you." Cordelia's laugh held no humor. "Mister, if I told you my troubles, we'd be here till Christmas. I just need this job and the $12 a month it pays." They worked in comfortable silence after that, the barn gradually transforming from a disaster to something approaching respectability. As the sun began to set, painting the sky the color of ripe peaches, Beaumont set down his tools. "You did good work today, Miss Whitmore. Real good. So did you, for a ranch hand." She studied his face in the dying light, noting the intelligence in his dark eyes, the way he carried himself with quiet authority. "Tell me something. Beaumont, what's a man like you doing shoveling horse manure?" His smile was enigmatic. "Sometimes a man's got to start somewhere, even if it ain't where folks expect him to be." As he walked away, Cordelia couldn't shake the feeling that there was far more to the mysterious cowboy than met the eye. And in a town like Millbrook Valley, secrets had a way of changing everything. The rooster hadn't even crowed when Cordelia arrived at the ranch the next morning, determined to prove her worth. She'd spent the night calculating and recalculating if she could somehow earn extra wages, maybe take on additional chores. She might save her family's land. She found Beaumont already in the barn, curry-combing a magnificent chestnut mare, with the kind of gentle patience usually reserved for children or lovers. "You're early," he said, without turning around. "So are you." She hung her worn shawl on a nail. "Don't ranch hands usually sleep till the foreman kicks them awake? Don't most ladies stay home and tend their gardens?" Cordelia bristled. "Ladies got bigger concerns than posies." The mare whinnied softly as Beaumont ran his hands along her neck. "This here's Duchess. Finest horse on the ranch, according to the boss. You talk about him like you know him personal." "We've had our conversations." Beaumont's tone was carefully neutral. "He's not what folks in town make him out to be." Cordelia had heard the stories the mysterious ranch owner who'd appeared in Millbrook Valley 5 years ago with more money than God and twice as much pride. never showed his face in town, conducted all business through his foreman, Jasper. Some said he was hideously scarred from the war. Others whispered he was running from something dark back east. Jasper says the owner's a recluse, barely speaks to anyone. Maybe he's got his reasons. Beaumont's voice carried an odd weight. Sometimes a man needs to know who he can trust before he shows his true face. They fell into their work rhythm, but today felt different. Beaumont watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. When she struggled with a particularly heavy water bucket, his hand covered hers to help, and the brief contact sent electricity straight up her arm. "Miss Whitmore," he said suddenly, "what would you do if you had enough money to solve your troubles? Back our land, fix the roof, maybe get Papa the medicine he needs." She didn't mention the dresses she'd glimpsed in the general store window, or the books she'd stopped allowing herself to want. Why? Just curious about your dreams. Dreams are for folks who got time for M. Around noon, Jasper appeared in the barn doorway, his grizzled face stern. "Whitmore, boss wants to see you up at the house." Cordelia's heart sank. She'd been fired before she'd even proven herself. "Don't look so worried," Beaumont said quietly. Sometimes the boss just likes to know who's working his land. The ranch house loomed ahead, bigger than anything in town, with wide porches and gleaming windows that spoke of wealth beyond her imagining. Jasper led her to a study lined with leather-bound books, where a figure sat behind a massive oak desk, face hidden in shadow. "Miss Whitmore." The voice was cultured, educated. "I understand you've been working with one of my hands." "Yes, Sir Beaumont. He's been helpful." A pause. "Has he indeed? And what's your impression of this, Beaumont?" Cordelia chose her words carefully. "He works hard, knows horses, treats them with respect." Interesting. Papers rustled. "I'm told you need this job badly." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I earn my keep, sir." "I'm sure you do." "I'm also told you're honest." "That's rarer than you might think." The figure leaned forward slightly. "I have a proposition, Miss Whitmore. Double wages if you're willing to work in the house as well as the barns. My current housekeeper is getting, on in years, $24 a month." It was more than she dared hope for. "Yes, sir, I accept." As she left the house, her heart soaring with possibility. She didn't notice the curtain twitch in the study window, or the familiar silhouette. Watching her walk away, working in the big house proved to be a revelation. The owner, it seemed, was a ghost who left evidence of his presence everywhere, but never appeared coffee cups still warm. Books left open, the lingering scent of bay rum and leather in rooms she'd just cleaned. But it was the little things that puzzled her most. Sheet music left open to melancholy ballads. A half-finished letter on elegant stationery. The words, "My dear Cordelia," visible before the rest, disappeared under an ink blot. Paintings of pastoral scenes that looked remarkably like the view from her family's failing farm. "You're mighty curious about the boss," Beaumont observed one afternoon. They were working together to repair a section of fence, and she'd been voicing her confusion about the mysterious owner's habits. "Ain't you? Working so close to a man you never see." Beaumont's hammer struck the fence post with perhaps more force than necessary. "Some men are worth knowing, others are better left alone. Which kind is he? The dangerous kind." His voice was so low she almost missed it. That evening, as Cordelia finished polishing the silver in the dining room, she heard piano music drifting from somewhere deeper in the house. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, filled with longing and something that sounded like regret. Following the sound, she found herself outside a closed door. Through the keyhole, she glimpsed elegant hands moving across ivory keys, but the player's face remained hidden in shadow. "Beautiful, ain't it?" She spun around to find Beaumont behind her, still dusty from his work, but somehow different, more refined, as if he'd shed an invisible costume. "I was just the music high, didn't mean to pry." "Course you didn't." His smile was gentle. Music's meant to be heard, after all. Do you know who plays? Someone who's got too much time to think about things he can't change. The music stopped abruptly, and they heard footsteps approaching the door. Beaumont grabbed Cordelia's hand and pulled her quickly away, leading her through a maze of corridors she hadn't known existed. "How do you know your way around so well?" she whispered. "Been here longer than most." They emerged onto a secluded balcony overlooking the valley. The moon was full, painting everything silver. And for a moment, Cordelia forgot about mysteries and secrets and concentrated only on how right it felt to have her small hand engulfed in his larger one. "Cordelia," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "There are things you don't know about me. Then tell me." "I can't. Not yet." "Why?" "Because once you know the truth, everything changes." He was standing so close she could see. Gold flecks in his dark eyes, could smell leather, and something uniquely him that made her pulse quicken. "Maybe I want things to change," she whispered. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, running a hand through his dark hair. "You should go home, Cordelia. It's late." "What about you?" "I've got some thinking to do." As she walked home through the moonlit valley, Cordelia couldn't shake the feeling that Beaumont was watching from one of the house's darkened windows. And for the first time since arriving at the ranch, she wondered if the mysterious owner might be closer than anyone suspected. The town social was Saturday night. And despite having a dress that had seen better years and shoes that pinched, Cordelia found herself looking forward to it. She'd earned her first full wages, $24, that felt like a fortune in her calloused hand sand for once. She could afford to think about something besides survival. She'd hoped to see Beaumont there, but the evening wore on without any sign of him. Instead, she found herself cornered by Percival Ashworth, the banker's son, whose soft hands and softer morals made her skin crawl. "Miss Whitmore, you're looking particularly lovely tonight," he used, his breath reeking of whiskey. "I hear you're working up at the mysterious ranch now." "I am." Dangerous place for a young woman. All sorts of unsavory characters lurking about. His hand settled on her waist, uninvited. "Perhaps you'd consider different employment. I could arrange something, ... more suitable." The implication in his tone made her stomach turn. "Quite satisfied with my current position, are you? Even working alongside common ranch hands and dirty cowboys." Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "I believe the lady said she was satisfied." Cordelia turned to see Beaumont approaching, but this wasn't the dusty cowboy she knew. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean waist. His hair was slicked back, revealing aristocratic features that belonged in a painting rather than a barn. He moved with the confident grace of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "And you are?" Percival's tone dripped disdain. "Someone who doesn't appreciate seeing a lady disrespected." Beaumont's voice carried quiet menace that made Percival step back. "This is hardly your concern, cowboy. Miss Whitmore's welfare is always my concern." Beaumont offered Cordelia his arm. "May I have this dance?" As they moved onto the dance floor, Cordelia felt as if she were floating. Beaumont danced with the skill of a man who'd attended cotillions, not barn raisings. "You're full of surprises," she murmured. "So are you." Most women would have swooned at Ashworth's attention. His family owns half the county. Ami don't make a man worth swooning over. His arm tightened around her waist. "No, it doesn't." "Beaumont, who are you really?" The question hung between them as the music swirled around other couples. His dark eyes held secrets she was beginning to suspect ran deeper than she'd imagined. "Would it matter if I were someone other than who you think I am?" "Depends on who that someone is." What if I told you I was a man who's spent too long hiding from the world? A man who's forgotten how to trust anyone until a certain stubborn woman showed up and reminded him what courage looks like. I'd say that man sounds lonely. He is. The song ended, but they remained locked in each other's gaze until the spell was broken by commotion near the punch table. Cordelia turned to see Jasper pushing through the crowd toward them, his face grim. "Boss," he said to Beaumont, then caught himself. "I mean, we got trouble." Beaumont's jaw tightened. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that wears badges and asks questions." Cordelia felt the blood drain from her face as understanding crashed over her like a cold wave. Boss Beaumont Tiff, that was even his real name, closed his eyes briefly. "Cordelia, I can explain." But she was already backing away, the betrayal sharp as a knife between her ribs. The mysterious ranch owner who'd been hiding in his house. The cowboy who worked too skillfully and spoke too well. The man who'd danced with her like he owned the world. They were all the same person. "You lied to me," she whispered. "I never lied. You let me clean your barns while pretending to be someone else. You watched me work myself to exhaustion while you played games." It wasn't a game, Cordelia. It was, but she was already pushing through the crowd, her heart breaking with each step. Behind her, she heard Jasper say something about federal marshals and old debts catching up. But the words seemed to come from underwater. She'd been such a fool. Cordelia didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat by her window, staring out at the ranch lights in the distance and trying to make sense of the tangle of emotions in her chest. Anger burned hottest at herself for being naive, at him for the deception. But underneath lay something more dangerous. The treacherous understanding that her feelings for Beaumont hadn't changed just because his name might be different. Dawn brought an unwelcome visitor. Percival Ashworth stood on her doorstep with 2 federal marshals, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Miss Whitmore, these gentlemen would like to ask you some questions about your employer." The older marshal, a weathered man with kind eyes, tipped his hat. "Ma'am, I'm Marshal Davidson. We're investigating reports of a fugitive using the name Beaumont Blackthorn." Her heart stopped. Fugitive. Financial crimes back in Boston. Embezzlement. Fraud. He disappeared 3 years ago with a considerable sum of money that belonged to other people. "You're mistaken," she said firmly. "The man I know would never steal." Percival's laugh was ugly. "My dear Cordelia, you've been cleaning the stables of one of the most wanted men in America. The ranch. The fortune all built on stolen money." The younger marshal leaned forward. "Miss Whitmore, we know you've been working closely with him. If you're hiding information about his whereabouts or activities, you could be charged as an accessory. I don't know anything about any crimes, but you do know where he is." Before she could answer, the thunder of hoofbeats filled the air. Through the window, she saw a magnificent black stallion approaching at full gallop. Its rider bent low over its neck. Beaumontor, whoever he really was, reined up outside her cabin. Dust swirling around him like something from a dime novel. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his face grim with determination. "Marshal Davidson," he called, stepping onto the porch. "I believe you're looking for me." "Beaumont Blackthorn," the marshal said, hand moving to his weapon. "You're under arrest." No. His eyes found Cordelia's. "But I need 5 minutes to explain to Miss Whitmore why I did what I did." "You'll have plenty of time to explain in custody, please." The word was raw, desperate. She deserves the truth. Davidson hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. But we stay right here." Beaumont stepped closer to Cordelia, his voice low and urgent. "My real name is Augustus Blackthorn. 3 years ago, I discovered my business partner had been stealing from our clients' widows, orphans, people who trusted us with their life savings. When I tried to expose him, he framed me for the thefts. So you ran? I ran. And I've brought the stolen money with me, not to keep it, but to find a way to return it to the people he'd robbed. His hands trembled as he reached into his jacket. This ledger contains every name, every amount stolen. I've been slowly returning the money anonymously, but it takes time to do it safely. Marshall Davidson stepped forward to examine the book, his expression shifting as he read. "The ranch," Cordelia whispered. "The job you gave me, the ranch is legitimate, bought with money I inherited from my grandmother. And the job," his voice broke. "I needed to know if you could care for someone like me, someone who worked with his hands and earned honest wages, or if you only wanted what my money could buy. You thought I was after your fortune. I thought you were different from every other woman who'd tried to trap me for my wealth. I was right, you were different. You were better." He looked at the Marshalls, then back at her. "I love you, Cordelia. That's the one true thing in this whole mess." Marshall Davidson cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackthorne, this ledger is compelling evidence. If what you're saying is true, it is, and I'll cooperate fully with your investigation if you promise to protect the people whose money I'm trying to return." The Marshal nodded slowly. "I think we can work something out." As they led him away in chains, Augustus turned back one last time. "Cordelia, will you wait for me?" She met his eyes, her heart breaking and mending simultaneously. "I'll wait." The trial lasted 3 weeks, and Cordelia attended every day, sitting in the front row where Augustus could see her. The evidence presented painted a complex picture. Man who'd discovered his partner's crimes and chosen to sacrifice his reputation rather than let innocent people suffer. Witness after witness testified to receiving anonymous payments that covered their losses, money that could be traced back to Augustus's accounts. The real criminal, his former partner Morrison Webb, had been arrested trying to flee to Mexico with what remained of the stolen funds. "Your Honor," Augustus said when called to testify, "I know I broke the law by taking that money even if my intentions were good. But I couldn't stand by and watch families lose their homes and life savings because of my poor judgment in choosing a business partner." The judge, an elderly man with penetrating blue eyes, studied the evidence carefully. "Mr. Blackthorne, while your methods were unorthodox and illegal, the court recognizes that your actions were motivated by conscience rather than greed. Given that you've cooperated fully with authorities and made restitution to the victims, I'm prepared to sentence you to 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service." The courtroom erupted in cheers, but Cordelia only had eyes for Augustus as relief flooded his features. Outside the courthouse, they finally had their first moment alone in weeks. "I'm sorry," he said, taking her hands, "for the deception, for dragging you into this mess." For she silenced him with a kiss that tasted of forgiveness and new beginnings. "You silly man," she whispered against his lips. "Don't you know I fell in love with the cowboy who shoveled manure beside me, not the rich rancher hiding in his big house. Even knowing the truth about my past, especially knowing the truth, it shows the kind of man you really are." He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. "I want to do this right, Cordelia. Court you properly, marry you if you'll have me build something real together. What about the ranch? It's ours if you want it, or we can sell it and start fresh somewhere else. I don't care, as long as you're with me." She thought of the big house that had felt so lonely, the barns where they'd first worked together, the land that stretched toward distant mountains like a promise of forever. "I think I'd like to stay," she said. "But next time you want to test someone's character, maybe just ask them outright instead of pretending to be someone else." His laughter was rich and warm. "I promise. No more disguises, no more games. Just Augustus Blackthorne, ex-criminal, current rancher, and completely devoted to one Cordelia Whitmore. Well, when you put it like that, ... She smiled up at him, her heart full of possibilities. I suppose I could do worse for a husband. Is that a yes? That's a yes. As they walked toward his waiting horse, their horse, now Cordelia reflected on the strange turns life could take. She'd come to the ranch desperate for work and found love instead. She'd thought she was falling for a simple cowboy and discovered a complex man capable of extraordinary sacrifice, and sometimes, so she thought, as Augustus lifted her onto the saddle behind him, the best disguises reveal more truth than they hide. 1 year later, the autumn air was crisp with promise as Cordelia adjusted her mother's wedding dress for the third time. The ivory silk, carefully altered to fit her smaller frame, rustled softly as she moved through the ranch house that now felt like home. "Stop fidgeting," laughed Mercy Patterson, her maid of honor and the preacher's daughter. "You look beautiful." Through the bedroom window, Cordelia could see guests gathering on the front lawn, ranchers and townspeople who'd initially been suspicious of Augustus but had gradually come to respect the man who'd transformed from mysterious recluse to pillar of the community. His community service had involved building a school for the valley's children and establishing a fund for families in financial trouble. "Are you nervous?" Mercy asked. "Not nervous. Excited." Cordelia touched the simple gold locket at her throat. Augustus's wedding gift containing a pressed flower from their first walk together. "I keep thinking about that first day in the barn, when I was so angry at the world and ready to fight anyone who crossed me. And now I know that sometimes the best things come disguised as something else entirely." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Mercy's mother with final preparations. Instead, Augustus stepped through the door, devastatingly handsome in his black suit and white shirt. "You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony?" Cordelia protested, though she made no move to hide. Too late for that. "Besides, I've got something that couldn't wait." He held out an official-looking document. "The final payment went out yesterday. Every person Morris and Webb stole from has been repaid in full." Tears pricked her eyes. "Augustus, that's wonderful. It means we can start our marriage with a completely clean slate. No more shadows from the past." He moved closer, his eyes soft. "With love, are you ready for this, Mrs. Soon-to-be Blackthorn?" "I've been ready since the day you picked up that pitchfork and worked beside me like we were equals." "We are equals. That's what I learned that first day you weren't impressed by wealth or position. You saw me, the real me, even when I was trying to hide." Music drifted up from outside the small string quartet Augustus had hired from the territorial capital. "That's our cue," he said, offering his arm, ready to make this official. The ceremony was held under the ancient oak tree where they'd shared their first real conversation about dreams and second chances. Preacher Patterson's words about love, trust, and partnership seemed to float on the golden afternoon light as Cordelia and Augustus exchanged vows they'd written themselves. "I promise to see the truth of who you are," Augustus said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, "even when life requires us to wear different faces for different reasons. I promise to work beside you, whether we're cleaning barns or building empires, because I learned that shared labor is the foundation of shared love." Cordelia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I promise to trust your heart even when I don't understand your methods. I promise to build something real with you, something that can weather any storm because it's built on honesty, respect, and the kind of love that sees beyond appearances to the soul beneath." When Preacher Patterson pronounced them husband and wife, Augustus's kiss was tender and full of promise. The crowd cheered. But Cordelia heard only the whisper of autumn wind through the oak leaves, and her husband's whispered, "I love you, Mrs. Blackthorn." The reception lasted until well past midnight, with dancing, storytelling, and enough food to feed half the territory. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Cordelia and Augustus found themselves alone on the porch where they'd shared so many conversations during their courtship. "Any regrets?" he asked, pulling her close against the evening chill. She leaned into his warmth, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "Only that it took us so long to be honest with each other. Well, we've got the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." In the distance, the barn where they'd first met stood silhouetted against the horizon, a reminder of humble beginnings and honest work. Tomorrow, they'd begin the next chapter of their story, not as mysterious rancher and desperate worker, but as partners in every sense of the word. Augustus, yes. Next spring, when we hire help for the busy season, let's make sure they know exactly who they're working for. His laughter rumbled in his chest. Agreed. No more disguises, no more games. Just us, building something real together. As they stood together under the vast Montana sky, Cordelia reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. She'd answered an advertisement for a job cleaning barns and found a love that would last a lifetime. Sometimes the best discoveries, she thought, came covered in dust and requiring a shovel to uncover. And sometimes the most honest work was learning to see the truth in another person's heart, regardless of the costume they wore or the secrets they carried.